Welcome to a special Lightning Talks event hosted by Boise State University in support of Partnerships of the Future, Forging U.S. and Southern African Networks. The purpose of this event is to broadly develop educational and research collaborations among South African, Namibian, and U.S. institutions of higher education, foundations, and governmental agencies. Through joint collaborations and investments, we can learn from each other and help each other accomplish our respective missions in new and more powerful ways. Thank you to everyone for attending today's event, and a special thank you to our presenters. We are excited to hear from each of you and learn something new about today's topic, cybersecurity. Before we hear from our speakers, I would first like to introduce Dr. Nancy Glenn, Vice President of Research and Economic Development at Boise State University, for some opening remarks. Dr. Nancy Glenn serves as Vice President of Research and Economic Development at Boise State University. She is also a professor in the Department of Geosciences within the College of Arts and Sciences. As Vice President of Research and Economic Development, Dr. Nancy Glenn leads Boise State's research enterprise, which has a record-breaking $91 million in awards in the fiscal year of 2023. Vice President Glenn oversees research policy and strategy at Boise State, working with Boise State's community and partners to engage in the excitement of knowledge discovery and the research process. Nancy, I'll go ahead and give it away to you.
Thank you, Catherine. Well, good morning, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here and to welcome you to Partnerships of the Future, Forging U.S. and African Networks, and in particular, these cybersecurity lightning talks as part of that partnership. I recognize that we're all probably on different time zones, and it's probably not the most convenient time for everyone. So I applaud you for being here and appreciate it very much. I'm in the rainy Pacific Northwest of the United States, and it's 7 a.m. and I look outside and it's drizzling and cold. So I'm actually very happy to be here this early. So again, thank you all for attending. I really appreciate you all being here and finding a time for us to meet and get to know each other. I'd love to give a special thank you to all the agencies as well as the African universities who are willing to join us today and engage in this dialogue. I'd also like to give a big thank you to our Associate Vice President, Matt Smith, for representing Boise State in this emerging partnership with African universities and across the globe to share and discuss opportunities for our future scholars in science, technology, engineering, and math. I think we all agree that now more than ever, our partnerships with international researchers and students are absolutely necessary for the betterment of our societies and for our world and for our science. A big shout out to the Center for Research and Creative Activity, in which Catherine is from. CIRCA, or the center in our group at Boise State, does an amazing job with organizing these lightning talks. And I think you'll agree after today's event. And if you have a theme that you'd like to explore outside of today, CIRCA would be happy to help you host themselves another theme. So don't hesitate to reach out to the CIRCA team and to Catherine in particular. Boise State is very eager to grow our interdisciplinary research, and lightning talks are one mechanism to help do this, to bring people together and allow us to better understand the breadth of expertise and interest across all of our universities, whether they're here in the United States or overseas. And so we're just absolutely tickled to have this event today. So I'll stop talking so we can get to the good stuff. And I invite you to have a lot of fun, enjoy each other's expertise and interests, ask questions, and let's continue the dialogue. So thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Nancy. We appreciate you being here and speaking as our opening. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Scott Sellars, who is from the U.S. Department of State. Dr. Sellars engages in multilateral science policy areas, specializing in creating capacity-building partnerships between international academic and scientific institutions, their United States counterparts, and the Department of State. Previously, Dr. Sellars was an AAAS Fellow at the NSF's Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure and at the Department of State's Office of Science and Technology Cooperation. Scott, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you, Nancy, for those wonderful opening remarks. Good day, everybody. My name is Scott Sellars. I'm a senior policy advisor at the U.S. Department of State. I work in the Office of the Science and Technology Advisor to the Secretary. And we tackle a lot of different challenges and problems across the Department of State, and can focus in on topics that range from specific technologies, how they're going to impact our foreign policy, like AI and other emerging technologies. But we also help to build capacity within the Department of State by bringing in scientists and researchers for fellowship experiences. That's actually how I arrived here at the Department of State, was through a professional development fellowship. And so we're just really happy to be here to see the turnout from all the different universities. You know, we led a delegation to Namibia and South Africa back in August. And what I took away from that trip was there was just such opportunity to bring people together and think about problems and try to solve them together. And so, you know, this is just an example of why we do that, is to share our ideas, to come together. And that's something that this office, my office, the Office of the Science and Technology Advisor to the Secretary, really values, is trying to find how we can bolster our collaboration internationally, because international perspectives and ideas really help us develop and come up with the most robust solutions. And so we can go much further together. And I look forward to seeing more of these types of events, getting our best minds together to think through different challenges in cybersecurity or AI or other topics, energy and many others, to try to come up with really robust solutions for our societies to deploy and benefit all of society. So with that, I'll turn it over to, I believe, Catherine, back to you, and we can kick off these lightning talks. So thank you again, and looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. Okay, let us move on to our main speakers for our lightning talks. For the lightning talks, we have 6 speakers who each have 5 minutes to present their topic. We're going to hold questions and discussions until after all of the presentations, where audience members will be able to have a chance to talk with presenters in breakout rooms. And I'll go more into breakout rooms here once we're done with our presentations. So I would like to present our first speaker, Dr. Subrata Acharya. Dr. Subrata Acharya is a computer scientist and the lead program officer for research access and inclusion efforts across the National Science Foundation's Computer and Information Sciences and Engineering Directorate. She currently manages a large portfolio of cooperative agreements, standard and continuation grants, aimed at building research capacity, promoting entrepreneurship, stimulating workforce development, and broadening participation across the national STEM enterprise. She leads the CISE Research Expansion Program and is the CISE lead for various NSF cross-divisional and cross-directoral programs. She received her PhD in computer science from the University of Pittsburgh and her master's in computer engineering from Texas A&M University College Station. She'll be talking to us today regarding cybersecurity and NSF. Subrata, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Again, welcome everybody. I just wanted to share a very wonderful African proverb, which I love, is like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think our international partnerships in this is something so very critical. Again, as Catherine said, that I am Subrata Acharya. I lead the access and inclusion efforts across SISE. And I would bring in 2 programs which are very critical to the NSF mission and vision. And with that also, I would like to bring in for a minute my, partner in crime, Dan Costley, who actually works on the program. If he can share a minute on the SATZ program, which is the Secure and Trustworthy Cyberspace. Next slide. Dan, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Dan Cosley, and I'm helping out with SATC. It's kind of the center program inside of NSF for security and privacy related research. There are other programs. There's CC, which is about scientific infrastructure security. There's a scholarship for service program that supports sort of workforce and education around security. But SATC itself is pretty large, funds or somewhere around $100 million worth of stuff a year, I think, in three main areas. A sort of core research area, an area that has a big kind of education and workforce development component that also wants to advance education research as part of it, and a transition to practice element. One thing that we like a lot about SATC and the way we handle it is that we have participation from a lot of different places at NSF. Our social behavioral economic sciences and education directorates play a pretty big role in the program. So it's not just, computer scientists, quantuming this and trusted execution environmenting that, but we're trying to sort of think of security as a sort of real systemic thing that involves hardware, technology, software, people, organizations, and structures. And I'll shut up because I don't know how long we should talk. But
No, Dan, thank you so much. So this is very important. It is our flagship. It's the vision of 2023 comes in handy because there are many things which have been achieved, and 2033 is the move forward, which aligns with the NSF 2030 vision. Next slide. Here, I would like to just give you a brief overview of what NSF and the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure has brought in. As Dan mentioned, this is kind of every single area which has research, education, and societal impact. I have some of these flagship projects and these programs which are here. I work with the Campus Cyber Infrastructure Program, which is very critical to build the cyber infrastructure, which we as nation and across the world have faced, which what happened with the COVID pandemic. So these are the kind of efforts which NSF is eager and available to collaborate and partner. If you see on the left-hand corner, there's the SATC, which Dan mentioned. There's multiple of these programs where knowledge sharing, engagement, trying to share best practices is the way to go. And this actually goes into many different international partners, which is leveraged with the Office of International Science and Engineering. So that's all for me here, but welcome everybody, and I will share more information during the breakout rooms.
Thank you so much, Subrata. We appreciate your words and look forward to hearing more from you in the breakout rooms. All right, we are going to go to our next speaker, Ed Vasko. Edward Vasko, CISSP, is the director of Boise State University's Institute of Pervasive Cybersecurity, where he is currently helping Boise State establish itself as a national leader of cybersecurity research and workforce development. While at Boise State, he has helped guide new degree programs and built a model for student competency development. He is also an entrepreneur with over 30 years of cybersecurity industry experience, and over the span of his career started 5 businesses, all in the cybersecurity field. His extensive experience in cybersecurity provides him deep expertise to help organizations of all sizes in securing their critical assets. He has served on over 20 education advisory boards, providing expertise around cybersecurity industry needs. In 2021, he was appointed by Governor Little to the Idaho Cybersecurity Task Force. He will talk to us today about the Cyberdome.
And
Ed, take it away.
Thank you, Catherine. Really do appreciate it. And hello, everybody. Regardless of time zone, thank you for being here. When I joined Boise State in 2020, I brought with me 2 theses that I wanted to test and build platforms around. The first was something that I had seen through my 30-year career in cybersecurity, which was that higher education was not quite hitting the mark of what industry and employer partners wanted and needed. This left our early career professionals oftentimes with a gap in having to pivot into other areas of technology or other areas of business in order then to move into a cybersecurity career. And part of this is that college and university curricula were producing a worker that was really only about 2/3 ready for the type of work that's required of them as they enter this career field. And what do I mean by this specifically? Well, while students receive great knowledge development in the classroom and good skill development in labs, they were consistently missing a place where these two items can be brought together in a real-time setting and melded to enable role-based competency. An analogy to consider is the rotation models of nursing and medical schools. As a longtime executive and hiring manager, I'll state that my perspective around these competency development methods are what's missing from most cybersecurity curricula across the country, and I would argue around the world. My second thesis was a result of the discovery of just how deep the digital divide continues to be for rural and underserved communities, even when broadband and other technology services are brought forward and enabled. For example, one critical impact area for newly enabled communities is their inability to attract and retain critically needed cybersecurity staff, just as the cyber adversarial threat environment expands rapidly with technology deployment. In other words, while broadband enablement positively impacts rural and underserved communities, it also creates significant risk because it opens these same communities up for adversarial impact. And so, coming to Boise State, I had a chance to meld these two challenges and these two theses together, and over 2 years of development, determined that we can help rural and underserved communities around the state of Idaho, while also producing an experiential learning platform for our students, through which they can gain early career competency. The result of which are enabled students transitioning to the workforce by being better prepared for the work that lies ahead of them as practitioners. The experiential learning platform we developed, with the help of funding from the Idaho Global Entrepreneurial Mission Higher Education Research Council, or IGEM-HERC, and Idaho's Workforce Development Council, is called the Cyberdome. The Cyberdome enables students throughout Idaho, regardless of home institution, while still in their academic programs, to work together using commercially available tools to provide real-time assessment, monitoring, detection, and information services to our rural and underserved communities throughout the state of Idaho. In doing so, our students gain competency not only in technical platforms and industry frameworks, but also on essential life skills such as communicating with a wide range of technical and non-technical audiences. Further, prior to graduating, our students gain awareness of what they'll be expected to do as they come into this career field. Our communities are gaining the critically needed force multiplying effects of a passionate student population being able to provide key cybersecurity services for them and combating cyber adversarial threats. So through our funding, what we've been able to achieve is a platform that brings together 40 students on an annual basis, enables these students with 6 months of real work experience for their resumes, and also provides them time and vouchers to obtain 2 CompTIA industry certifications. Just as important, though, we are able to serve communities with critically needed cybersecurity services that help them fight cyber adversaries. I'd love to talk more about this with you if there's interest, so please come and see me in the breakout room. Catherine, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Ed. We love hearing about all of the things going on in Idaho and all of the advances being made. Appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. All right, next we're going to hear from Dr. Raymond Greenlaw. Dr. Raymond Greenlaw received a BA with honors in mathematics from Pomona College.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Raymond.
Give me a thumbs up. Okay.
Yes.
I can't hear anything anybody's saying. Give me a thumbs up when you want me to start, Catherine.
Perfect. Okay, so he received his BA with honors from mathematics.
Okay, I'm starting now.
Okay.
Accrediting cybersecurity programs. I'll start with the introduction. There's many different types of cyber crimes: denial of service, online extortion, stolen funds, ransomware, IP infringements, and so on. Cybersecurity programs are springing up, some at for-profit institutions. UNAM is proposing a master's in cybersecurity. Boise State has a Bachelor of Applied Science and a BS in Cyber Operations and Resilience. They also have certificates in Applied Computing Systems and Networks, Cyber for All, and Cyber Operations. There's a great range of programs available. Potential students and the general public may be overwhelmed. There's a fast-growing job market. Businesses are experiencing huge financial losses. Experts are needed in cybersecurity. How do we know which programs are legit? Let me say a few things about cybersecurity, and I apologize, I couldn't hear the earlier speakers. There's many areas the field is growing. There's cyber defense, which involves cryptography, data security, network security, information assurance, cyber operations involving cyber attack penetration testing, behavioral science involving things like social engineering, cyber physical systems, including SCADA systems, supervisory control and data acquisition systems, secure software engineering, cyber ethics involving IP rights and professional responsibilities, cyber policy governance and law, cyber risk management, and digital forensics, for example, securing a cyber crime scene. Let me talk a little bit about accreditation. That involves a criteria that includes a set of standards. Accredited programs meet those standards and informs the public about the quality of a program. Just because a program isn't accredited doesn't mean they're not a good program. For example, Harvard's computer science program is considered pretty good, but they're not ABET accredited. By the way, ABET stands for the Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology, and they're one of the key players in cybersecurity accreditation. In 2014, myself, Alan Parrish, and Andy Phillips wrote a paper that we published in ACM Inroads, advocating that ABET develop program criteria for cybersecurity. We piloted that criteria after several years, and now we have criteria for bachelor's and associate two-year programs, which are called diplomas over here. About 25 programs are currently accredited and others are lining up. Let me talk a little bit about ABET's program criteria for cybersecurity. That applies to programs with names like cyber operations, computer security, computer forensics, and so on. The curriculum must include at least 15 courses or modules, and they must include the cross-cutting concepts of confidentiality, integrity, availability, risk, adversarial thinking, and system thinking. We need to know how the bad guys think in order to keep them from breaking in. Programs that are ABET accredited must include the following topics. And let me not say the word security after all these, except the first and last ones. Data security, software, component, connection, system, human, organizational, and societal security. There also must be discrete mathematics and statistics in the program. ABET is also doing something called certificate recognition. There's a huge number of certificates being offered. How does the public know about their quality? This is an ongoing development. The criteria is being developed right now. I'm actually piloting the criteria this fall for the first graduate program to be tested with this, and also an undergraduate program. I'm doing that work with Raj Rajenda, who happened to be a grad student compatriot at the University of Washington. Cybercrime is increasing and the public is becoming more aware of this problem. There's news reported daily about cybercrimes. There's a growing job market. Academic programs are springing up to meet industry needs. Boise State has many programs in cybersecurity, and their CS program has been ABET accredited since 1994. UNAM is developing its programs, and there's room for creating a synergy between these programs and having exchanges. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raymond. We appreciate it. Hopefully we'll be able to.
Glad you could hear me. I can't hear anything you're saying. Thank you very much.
Hopefully we'll be able to fix that before the breakout rooms. Awesome. We will now hear from Dr. Edoardo Serra. Dr. Edoardo Serra holds the position of Associate Professor within the Department of Computer Science at Boise State University, concurrently serving as a senior researcher with a joint appointment at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. He earned his PhD in Computer Science Engineering from the University of Calabria in Italy in 2012. Dr. Serra's research expertise lies in the domains of graph representational learning, robust and machine learning, and application of machine learning and artificial intelligence for cyber and national security. He'll talk to us today about integrating AI and cybersecurity. Edoardo, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, guys. My research is, as was said, in the corner, right, between AI and cybersecurity. And today I will just talk about two examples of that. One is AI for cyber, and the other is cyber for AI. The first things is graph representational learning. This is a kind of research that is supported by a grant from NCIAC that is part of a national security agency. And the idea is about doing anomaly detection on provenance graph that essentially are graph where several events from cyber, not just traffic flow, but also events from process generated, file change, and so on, modification in the machine, are aggregated in a unique graph and processed. This kind of graph are huge and really needs to be processed fast. Then create tools that are able to process that is somehow imperative to have a global vision of what is going on in your system. And the fact to do anomaly detection on that allow the possibility to be able to recognize things that are different from normal behavior, and with the potential use for detecting zero-day attack and so on. And the idea of graph representation learning is really the idea that from a graph, we create some representation of it. It can be representation of the nodes, it can be representation of the edge, or it can be representation of the graph entirely. And here you can see in the picture some example. Given the graph and the nodes in a graph, we are going to move each node of the graph in a vectorial representation. That means a point in the space, and then we are going to process that with machine learning algorithm, standard machine learning algorithm. This kind of AI technology, I'm saying, I largely use that for several applications in cyber. One of that is the processing of this large provenance graph, but there are other applications like malware. For example, process the API call of the malware, try to understand how the malware evolve, how the graph can evolve, this graph of the API call can evolve over time, and be able to predict possible polymorphic malware. Or other things like, for instance, a recent publication that I did was about try to predict targeted attack from nation by using politics events. And of course, metadata traffic and also bots. And this is an aspect of what AI can do for cyber. If we revert the things and we are doing some cyber for AI, one of branch of my work is to do adversarial robust machine learning for NLP tasks. And in particular, I'm working on NLP tasks that are verification claim and automatic verification claim, and at the same time, misinformation in collaboration with another colleague here at Boise State. What we are doing in that field is the generation of new adversarial attack that are meaningful. Essentially, it's not just a normal perturbation of the sentence, right, with sometimes nonsensical words that destroy completely the semantics, but to create really attacks that are sensible, that are meaningful, and that effectively reverse the classification. At the same time, we want to protect from this attack, and then how to create approach that makes this model more robust to such attack. And in all of this, we are going to use a lot of transfer learning, generative AI, to protect in some sense also generative and AI-based stuff. And with these things, I give you some overview of my research, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Edoardo. We appreciate you coming in and telling us about some of the research that you're doing. It's really interesting. Awesome. We will now hear from our next speaker, Dr. Noëlle van der Waag-Cowling. Dr. Noëlle van der Waag-Cowling is a strategy associate at the Cybersecurity Institute and research fellow at the School for Data and Computational Sciences at the Stellenbosch University. She is also program lead at the Security Institute for Governance and Leadership at Stellenbosch University. Her work cuts across both the public and private sectors and has a strong focus on risk, policy, and geostrategic threats in information security. She is a member of the review board of the International Journal of Cyber Warfare and Terrorism, as well as the TANA High-Level Forum on Security in Africa. She served as a member of the group of global experts to the International Committee of the Red Cross on the protection of civilians during cyber warfare in 2020 and on the protection of humanitarian data in 2022. Noëlle is passionate about tech innovation in Africa and building cyber capacity on the continent. She was featured in the top 50 women in cyber in Africa and Deloitte's Woman in Cyber. She's going to talk to us today about strategic threats in cyberspace. Noëlle, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Catherine. So people typically ask me what keeps you up at night, and what keeps me up at night in the African context is a serious strategic cyber threat, a systemic cyber threat. Why? I think because on a governmental level, we lack a crisis architecture, we lack national disaster response mechanisms, and so these threats are particularly worrying to us. What do I mean by strategic cyber threats? Different from your everyday cyber threats that may be at a personal level or perhaps a business level. I'm talking about large strategic cyber threats, usually driven by other states, that target state entities or critical infrastructure. Advanced persistent threat actors. These are normally proxy actors for states, and their goals are either to get into networks and remain there for a long time for espionage purposes, or more worryingly, I think, to linger there for as long as possible and plant exploits in critical infrastructure, which can be unleashed at some future date. So the major concern here as a result of this would be a catastrophic systemic cyber event. I think it's important to understand how that impacts state stability and how nation states exploit the gray zone of conflict underneath the threshold of war to conduct these types of operations, but not risk censure. There's a lot of deniable ambiguity that goes with these types of attacks. So what are we typically looking at in terms of the modus operandi? 5 stages: gain access, establish a foothold, deepen access, move laterally within the network, look, learn, and remain. At the bottom of the slide, you can see Microsoft's new naming taxonomy for these threat actors. So we're really talking here about the big guys, the advanced threat actors. They've moved away from things like Fancy Ben, Hello Kitty. So we typically sit with country type of taxonomies. There's approximately 160 nation-state actors out there. Recently, we saw Volt Typhoon, the Chinese actors, get into US critical infrastructure, and a big warning from CISA that they were across various elements of critical infrastructure. What made this so scary was that they didn't use any malware whatsoever. It was a really clever form of attack, and that they actually platformed off small home offices in the US that surround critical infrastructure plants, such a neglected area of cybersecurity, the small business sector. To launch their attacks. Well, they haven't yet launched an actual attack. They're in the networks there. So we're seeing new threats and new challenges all the time. So I think what's important about systemic risk is understanding that we live in a society of systems. And I find that students often battle to get their heads around this. They battle to even adequately identify what critical infrastructure is and what an important role it plays in modern societies. So the system of systems, essentially, if you look at the graph on the right, systems of systems are the way we've networked our society, the way we've linked all our systems, and they have interdependencies with one another. So this is where we see the potential, if you take out something, for cascading effects onto other systems, so you can sit with a real mess. So we had an incident this weekend, a major cyber incident in Australia, and Australia was very quick to move on this. 40%, 4 of their ports have shut down, 40% of their port capability shut down, but they've got a very well-oiled machine that comes and responds to these types of things. I think in our types of environments, not so much. So what is the other problem in the African context? We have massive single points of failure, simply because we haven't diversified our critical infrastructure suppliers. So in the case of South Africa, we sit with, for example, with one electricity grid, one port operator, and so it goes. So these are really, really worrying, and the spillover into economic damage, supply chain insecurity, which quickly leads to food insecurity, and then, of course, societal and state stability. These are the things that we really, really need to start focusing on at an African level. And I think globally, we also need to ask ourselves, as we see these new attack vectors and these new techniques that are being used, so are we doing enough at the micro enterprise level? So we cannot afford to just focus at the top, but we really also need to be looking at the micro enterprise and small business level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noëlle. That's really knowing like how everything is, connected and whatnot, but seeing that graph and whatnot, it really kind of brings it home. And it's, like you said, it's a little worrying. So thank you for talking on that. That was really interesting. All right, we will now hear from our last presenter, Dr. Kurtis Cantley. Dr. Kurtis Cantley leads the Electronic and Neuromorphic Devices and Systems Lab at Boise State University, investigating the unique properties and capabilities of spiking neuromorphic architectures through simulation, fabrication, and advanced electrical characterization. Dr. Cantley received his bachelor's degree from Washington State University in 2005, his master's degree from Purdue University in 2007, and his PhD from the University of Texas at Dallas in 2011, all in electrical engineering. Following postdoctoral research at UT Dallas, he joined Boise State in 2013, earning the rank of associate professor in 2019. Dr. Cantley has received the Young Investigator Awards from the Air Force Office of Scientific Research in 2014 and the Defense Threat Reduction Agency in 2017, as well as the NSF Career Award in 2018. He'll talk to us today about neuromorphic systems for power grid cyber resilience. Dr. Cantley, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Catherine. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here, and good morning or good evening to you, depending on exactly where you're at. So I'm going to talk today about using neuromorphic computing to monitor the power grid and hopefully make it more secure. So for those of you who aren't super familiar with what neuromorphic computing is, it is really a new type of computing architecture or computing paradigm that's based very much on the brain. So today's computers obviously use binary information, and they're digital and mostly synchronous processing of information. And they operate at speeds of up to gigahertz, right? The processor in your computer is probably like about 3 gigahertz. And maximum power consumption is usually on the order of 100 watts per centimeter squared inside your processor, although that scales up, obviously, depending on, data center. It can be using kilowatts or megawatts of power. In contrast, the brain operates completely differently, right? It's asynchronous and event-driven. So we have all these sensory inputs just coming in, and that's when information starts to be processed, is when you have sensory information coming in. The information is actually encoded electrically, so it's encoded in voltage spikes, much like in computers, but those spikes can occur kind of at any time, and so the other big difference is in biology, the speeds are not nearly as fast, so the brain operates approximately, at a few hundred hertz maximally, which is obviously several orders of magnitude different than our digital computers. So the big difference is the fan out in the brain. Each neuron that generates those little voltage spikes can connect to thousands of other neurons. And so there's this massive fan out and interconnectivity in the brain that allows it to do the processing. It's also extremely efficient. So biological brains only consume on the order usually of about 10 watts of power. That's very different than your normal digital computer, and certainly very different than a data center. And brains are also incredibly defect tolerant. So, there's a lot of reasons that we want to look to biology and that biological inspiration in terms of trying to build new compute systems. So in terms of actually applying that to cyber physical systems and cybersecurity, what we're starting with is to look at the power grid. And so obviously that's a very complex system of systems that's very widely distributed and has all kinds of different components within that system. So it's extremely difficult to use and train just the standard, today's like machine learning models in software based on all of the physical signals coming from power grid, because you have digital communications, you have industrial control protocols and things like that. You have generating stations, power plants, and all this, and then you have distribution lines just distributed over large areas, and then you have the consumers, right? And within that large system, there's smaller substations and all of those things controlling kind of where that power is flowing. It's an incredibly distributed and complex system that we need a very complex computer to try to monitor. And so what we are looking at doing is taking all of those very disparate signals that are coming from a small section of power grid, probably at this point about like a 39 bus IEEE standard model from the power grid, simulating that in real time, taking all of those signals and trying to train a neural network, a spiking neural network that's very much like the brain, to recognize correlations in those different signals, right? Obviously, if a tree falls on a power line, that's an obvious thing that you can detect, right? And you can kick a breaker, turn the system off, and you're not going to have a problem. But when you have more subtle cyber attacks, for instance, those that are injecting small signals into your into the lines and changing the power factor, so how power is delivered to the customer, or just if someone can actually just completely change the signal, and so you're receiving the wrong signal. We want to try to take those subtle correlations and learn to detect changes when there's a cyber attack, right? And so we'll train a spiking neural network using an evolutionary optimization algorithm to try to detect those changes from cyber attack, and then have another response network that feeds back into the system to hopefully try to mitigate those attacks and make the grid more resilient. So really excited about the project, and it was great hearing from everyone else as to what they're doing. And please come talk to me in the breakout sessions. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you to all of our speakers. We really appreciate your time. And again, across multiple time zones, we're so grateful that everybody was able to come and speak and teach us a little something about cybersecurity.